This season's been pretty crazy. We have been all over the map. I think I've played Rebecca from ages 16 to 80 something and everything in between. I had no idea that's what I was signing up for when I got cast on the show. But I mean, I think we've seen this woman in every juncture of her life, from an idealistic teenager to a still idealistic, optimistic young woman who's potentially falling in love, to a grieving widow, or to a grieving widow, to a woman present day who's excited about the arrival of a new grandchild. It's been a lot. It's been a powerful season. I feel like there's a real comfort and familiarity 54 episodes in for all of us with who these characters are. And even, jumping around in time, playing this woman at different facets of her life, it's gotten easier for me as well, in a sense. Just like, the 3.5 hours to go through hair and makeup to play Rebecca present day, it allows me time to get into my head and to get into that frame of mind. And I have a real relationship with looking at myself in the mirror and going, okay, I know where I am. I know my shoulders are a little more slouched. I weirdly decided that Rebecca has some arthritis in her right hand, like episode 2 of season 1. So it's like I see myself in that wig and immediately I'm clenching my hand a little bit. And I have this real relationship to Sterling and Justin and Chrissy. The only time I get to work with them is when I'm in present day. So there are these little clues, these little pieces of muscle memory that immediately put you in the right place to play this character at whatever time period. I think Rebecca is the ultimate teacher for me because she's lived this fully realized life. She's kind of done everything. She has children and grandchildren and found this great, deep, soulful, once-in-a-lifetime love, and found the second chapter of her life and has found companionship and love again. And she pursued music with sort of vigor, and I mean, she's kind of done a little bit of everything, and she still is patient and curious about the world around her, but also really steady in who she is and what she sort of brings to the table as a wife and a mother and a grandmother. All of that I find really inspiring. I think she's a great teacher. I love that our audience trusts us from very early on in the series to know that okay, we're gonna do an entire episode about one character, or maybe about a character you don't really know too much about. I love that this year we saw Toby getting pretty much his own episode, Beth getting her own episode. We saw, Jack's backstory in Vietnam, and that was a huge through line for, at least the first half of the season. I feel like we do things, we're allowed to get away with things on network television that no other show would be able to do. And that's such a testament to our audience and the fans of the show that allow us to go there and they trust us. They know that there is a reason behind all of these decisions. And I think people are just curious about, people want to know, what is Beth's deal? Where did she come from? Who is her mother and father and her siblings? And why is she the way she is? So I love that we're allowed to answer those questions, and it feels like we have breath and we have space, and there's not a ton of expectation other than people trust it's going to be quality television. Season 3 is different than season 1 for sure. It's it is a little bit more comfortable, but a show like this always keeps you on your toes because as you're never really allowed to get too comfortable, because clearly there are a lot of gaps. You know, we're jumping around in time, and often it's sort of up to us as actors to kind of try and figure out, answer some of those questions, and we may not always be correct with our assumptions. So sometimes we'll get new information, and not that it's necessarily earth-shattering to the audience, but us as actors, it's like, oh, I've kind of been thinking like just a little bit left of that for, you know, the last year or so. Okay, so you have to sort of recalibrate with whatever new information comes your way. So in that sense, it's like we're always kept on our toes. There's always a new challenge. But we're a real family, and we kind of have been since minute one, but it's like most of the crew that's with us through, you know, has been with us from the jump. They've been with us since the very, very beginning. So I feel like we've had this entire like lifetime together already, and that feels, it's unlike any other job I've ever had. I think that I think this episode is sort of the culmination of most of the season, but especially the last half. I think there will be a lot of highly anticipated questions answered. I think there have probably been some concerns from things that have been alluded to over the course of the season that will be tied up more or less in this finale. I think people will be satisfied with some of those answers and be blindsided by things they didn't necessarily see coming. To a certain extent. Nothing crazy, but kind of crazy. There's one detail in particular that I was really surprised about, because we're kept like apprised as to like where our characters are going, but not necessarily for everybody. And I think I knew a little bit about one particular detail that I'm specifically talking about, but I didn't know when or how it was necessarily going to be revealed. So I was not expecting it in this finale episode, and I was very surprised. I think the audience will be heartened by what they learn. In some instances, I think, yes, they will be satisfied by some of the questions that are answered, but in typical fashion of this show, we sort of pose a whole new set of questions. And luckily, we have time to get there. I mean, unfortunately, people are going to have to wait like, 5 or 6 months to get some of those answers, and they probably won't be answered right away, but I think it just gives a greater indication of like what we're working towards. So I think it will leave people, it'll leave people feeling good. I mean, I'm really extraordinarily proud to be a part of a show that that I think has always delivered in terms of representation. From minute one, I think the inception of the show was sort of built upon that. And I think, you know, a huge debt of that credit obviously goes to Dan Fogelman, but also our writers, because if anything on our show feels authentic and grounded, that is a testament to the writing. That's sort of where it all starts. And, you know, I know that the writers are extremely vulnerable when they get in the room and they're tossing out story ideas and bringing their own life to the table in unimaginable ways that end up, you know, on the page and then on people's television sets. So I think so much credit goes to them. And again, like I'm unbelievably proud to be a part of a show that has so much to say, and, you know, there's something or somebody to recognize something in themselves. Like there's something for everybody in our show, whether it's a storyline or a character or a particular issue that a character is dealing with. There is something for everyone that sort of forces us to hold a mirror up to our own lives and either, you know, ask some tough questions or just like the feeling of being seen and being heard, which is ultimately the most important thing. I think what we talk about on the show is so universal that even if you don't necessarily recognize yourself per se on, you know, on screen, what our characters are going through, what they're living through, what they're struggling with is is just, it's universal. It's undeniable. So that's often what people come up and want to talk about. I think from the inception of the show, it's always been people really eager to share their story and how they relate to the show and why they relate to the show. There's never just, there's never usually just a comment made in passing. People want to they have something to say to you, which is emotionally overwhelming in the best sense. I don't think any of us were really prepared for it, and there's no way to get used to it, because if you're a real human being and you're present in a moment and somebody wants to connect with you that way and be vulnerable and share this huge piece of their life with you, it's pretty wild and humbling, you know?